And the tape you're about to hear is a live lecture I gave based on the ideas in a self-study program of spiritual psychotherapy called A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles is not a religion, but a psychological training in the relinquishment of a thought system based on fear and the acceptance instead of a thought system based on love.
Turn with me and take the hand of the person who's seated next to you. Together we all take a very deep breath. We see in the middle of our mind a little ball of golden light. We watch this light as it begins to grow, larger and larger, until now it covers the entire inner vision of our mind. We see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. We see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. We see that the inside of the temple is lit by this same beautiful golden light. And we are here for we have been drawn together by the power and in the presence of God. We dedicate our time spent together, as well as our relationships to one another, to Him. We ask that His Holy Spirit, who is within us, so guide our thoughts and feelings and perceptions, that we might grow into happier, more peaceful, more loving human beings. Thank you very much. We all say, Amen. I woke up this morning thinking that tonight's lecture was going to be about something about the past and releasing the past and letting go of the past. But then everybody I spoke to on the phone today, everybody that I met had stuff going on with their relationships. And I thought maybe that we talked about relationships too much on Tuesday nights, but at least one person assured me that you can never really talk about it too much. It seems to me always like all the stuff in the Course in Miracles is so much repetition of the same stuff over and over again. But the reason truth is about telling of the same things over and over again is not because it's complicated, but because the mind has tremendous resistance to it. And the mind has tremendous resistance to it because the truth, of course, as God defined it, is 180 degrees away from the thinking of the world. So to accept God's truth is to give up your way of doing things. Now, there is no area in which the resistance is stronger than in the area of intimate relationships. Because of that same reason, we have tremendous attachment to our pictures around intimacy. And so when the Course in Miracles tells us in this area, as in all others, that the way you've been doing things is not going to get you what you want, try something completely new, then the mind says, 180 degrees change? 37 degrees maybe. 41 degrees maybe, 50 degrees maybe, and then it's when you really get into some tough situations, because then you really start trying to, as the Course would say, reconcile the irreconcilable, doing some things God's way and some things your way, and that's when things really get a little crazy. And so tonight, once again, let's go over some real basic principles that the Course has to say about intimate relationships. Now, first of all, the principles of truth are the principles of truth, whether you're talking about intimate relationships or any other area of your life. But when you look at them in terms of intimate relationships, they sort of take on a whole new meaning because the principles touch you and your own personal experience so heavily. You're not here to change another person. The issue in relationship is not to try to get a brother to be what you want them to be. Real relationship is not where you have pictures of what someone should be like and then you try to make them into that or try to fix them. Real life is not that you are here, the Course says, in order to change or fix anyone. You are on this earth in order to accept everyone exactly as they are. Now, it just so happens that when people are accepted exactly as they are, miracles occur. Miracles of healing, miracles of correction. I know in my own life, even just thinking, thinking back in terms of things with my mother, how she would always be bugging me about this or that. And she'd stop bugging me, and then I would know in my mind that it was time for this or that change to occur. And it would change much more, those changes would occur much more quickly in situations where no one was bugging me to change. Haven't you ever noticed that? Now, what we tend to do, of course, in our close, what the Course would call special relationships, is to have these ideas about what we think we need. And the Course in Miracles says that all of our problems in intimacy come because we are trying to use the relationship to suit our needs as we define them. We have this idea of what we need, and it's a very popular notion. As a matter of fact, it's just an extension of so much in this generation about getting what we want and controlling things to be the way that we want them to be. And what the message of the Course in Miracles is that whole idea is an inaccuracy. Because the truth of the matter is when you're trying to control something so much that it tends not to happen the way you were trying to get it to happen. But it's also a correlation to that you really don't need to control the forces of life. Embryos do turn into babies without any help from you. And planets revolve around the sun without any help from you. And seeds turn into flowers without any help from you. And relationship will fall into place if you would stop trying to interfere. And the reason we try to interfere so badly is because we have this, as the Course says, you have the frame, and you're trying to meet somebody who will become the picture that you can put into the frame. Rather than meeting someone saying, this is an interesting picture, what kind of frame would I put on that? But the reason we don't do that is because we have a notion in our mind of what we want in a relationship, how long we want it to be, how we want the person to act in relationship to us, all this kind of stuff that we call, and we put words on it like, to me, that means the person is there for me. That's one of the things I hear from people so much, that their complaint in a relationship is that someone wasn't there for them. But I've got to tell you, in listening to people over and over again and looking back in my own experience, so often when people are saying, my complaint in this relationship is that they're not there for me, all that really means is they're not there in the way I think that someone ought to be there if they're going to be in a romance with me. You can do that if you want, but the Course says that that's not relationship. Now, one of the things that you hear me say over and over and over again, in every issue we have to ask ourselves, am I coming at this from what am I getting, or am I coming from this from what am I giving, right? Like, for instance, if you think that someone is not there for you, let's say with one case I heard it was that a man was very involved with his work, all right? So the issue was, she says, I'm not getting from him as much attention. Well, you could just as easily say, she's not giving him permission to be where he has to be. Somebody else was dating a woman much younger than he. And he was talking about how he wasn't getting from her adult response to his needs. I said, you're the one who's not giving her permission to be the age that she is. You know how old she is. You're the one who's not giving her the space to go through whatever she needs to be. Now, the interesting thing is, usually, the line that comes out of the mouth of the person who's complaining because they don't get what they need to get, always, you hear people say things like, I want them to be here for me. I want them to commit more to this relationship so that we can have a relationship. And my point is, this is the relationship. This is the relationship. The issues of relationship are right here, right now. You're grabbing. You are controlling. You are trying to make them be exactly what you think they ought to be and when you think they ought to be it. Now then you hear the question from people come up over and over again. But when do you know when you're supposed to leave? Now, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step programs have really affected a lot of our thinking, and for good reason. I think it's a very good thing because I think it's a very, very high book. But if you're talking about a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, then often there is behavior that you can point to that almost anybody could agree on is maladaptive. And then those issues become Al-Anon issues, etc. However, there are a lot of issues, for instance, where drugs and alcohol are not involved, where a lot of people, I think, expect me to agree that something is unacceptable. And, of course, a Miracles companion would really not be so quick, outside of the purview of the drug and alcohol situations that we all know, that are the kind of the classic ones. Outside of that area, there are a lot of things where I have to say to people, who's to say it's maladaptive? I don't think it's maladaptive. It's what you don't want. Now, if it's something that you don't want in a relationship, then you have to ask yourself what is really going on. Because the Course in Miracles says that no relationship will be able to hurt you as long as you think of it as something that's not here to fit your needs as you define them, but a relationship that is here to serve God's needs. And so many times when you have this idea that you're not getting what you want, and when am I going to leave because this isn't what I want? What it seems to me is that if you just allow a person to be exactly what they need to be, then the issue is you're not really trying to make it be a romance. You are having a higher commitment. And that is what the Course in Miracles says every relationship is brother to brother. That's why the Course doesn't even use the term brothers and sisters. Because even using the term brothers and sisters would imply that there's a difference among us. There's no difference among us. We're all the same being, really. And so what the Course teaches us is to develop relationships which we just see people as our brothers, which means we see people as our friends. Now, if you're putting the friendship first, which is your brotherhood with another person first, then it doesn't occur to you so much whether or not it fits into your ideas and your pictures about whether or what you want a romance to look like. But it does mean that you're putting the friendship first, and then if they're not behaving in ways, or if their behavior doesn't interact with yours in ways that it would be the perfect romance, then you're not going to have to make any heavy dramatic decisions about whether to leave. It will just, that form will drop of itself. It's a basic spiritual principle. Go for God, and all that is not authentically you will drop of itself. And the same is true in relationship. You go for friendship. And if the sex leaves and the romance leaves, let it. If it stays, let it. It doesn't have to be such heavy decision-making time, and it won't have to be as long as what you're going for is the friendship factor. Now, that means giving up. It is such a complete, radical reworking of all the mythology. Some woman was saying to me that she was talking to someone that she was going out with, and he offered to take her on a vacation. And she said, I want more than a vacation. I want to know what's going to be next year. I want something permanent. I thought, my God. I said, you might just, once again, what am I not giving? I said, this is a person who gave you love. You really can't say this person didn't give you love. This person said, let's go on a vacation. But you had to bring up the future. What about beyond the vacation? And the Course in Miracles says that what you have in a relationship is what you have in your life. What you have that matters in life. You have this present moment. And so many times people in relationship are spending all their time complaining about what they want in the future, rather than appreciating what is in the present. And this whole idea is very frightening to us because we have this idea that if we just let a person be, something in our mind says, wait a minute, I have to police them. It's like I have to police them. And really to say I have to police them is really the same thing as saying, no, I have to make them guilty. I have to make them guilty because the Course says that's what the ego mind does. That's what romantic love, the special relationship, is built on. The idea that someone is guilty. And someone always will be guilty, as long as anybody has an idea of what it means for other people to be what they think that they need them to be. And what's always happening in those situations is that the reason you want somebody to be there for you, the reason you want somebody to be something that you think you need, is because on some deep level you have not allowed yourself to see that those are things you have to do for yourself. I was telling someone today that it was a big lesson for me to get that a man didn't owe it to me to hug me when I felt like I needed to be hugged. It's one thing to say how marvelous it is to find someone who just wanted to, but that's different from thinking that anybody owed it to me. You don't have difficulty giving up the idea that people owe you anything once you realize how much you owe yourself. Once you realize that all your sense of abundance doesn't come from someone else. Your sense of abundance doesn't come from what other people give to you. Your sense of abundance comes from what you give. And what you give to the world then becomes what you are giving to yourself, because that's the only way you can experience anything. So we have a very difficult time just letting people go and letting people be, because the way we've got it sort of fixed up here is that there's all this emotional sustenance that we need from other people. But that right there puts us off balance in relationship, because everybody's sort of fighting from hunger. Give it to me, I need it, I need to be fed. And that's not abundance in relationships. Abundance in relationships is not where you're coming from, feed me, feed me, feed me. Abundance in relationship is, I have so much, let me give to you. And then the other person can feel, yeah, oh, I have so much, let me give to you. That's abundance. And the interesting thing is that it's a higher drama. And we say here all the time about giving up the cheap drama. You don't give up the drama when you come to God. You just give up the cheap drama. That is so true in romantic relationships. I see people going through things and people putting each other through things and stuff like that. And I'm glad that I'm not involved in some of that major drama anymore, but I think that when I used to experience that kind of drama, I used to look at people like me and think, oh, life would be boring. But life is not boring when something, I always say it's fast in the slow lane. Something inside, when changes are occurring in terms of how people perceive themselves, that's real life. And ultimately that's real exciting too. But it's a big issue to say, okay, I am not here to fix a brother. I'm not here to change a brother. Now, if that means that their being a certain way means that I don't want to be involved with them romantically anymore, then we're grown-ups here. You know what that means. That just means let them go, God be with you, release them. And, as people say to you all the time when you're breaking up in relationships, you should be grateful that they're leaving because they're just leaving so that the person who is better suited for the job can come closer. And it's true. It's a cliche, and we say it all the time, but it is true. Why do you, look at what you do. You meet friends, and you're very aware that everybody that you meet is different. And you're very aware when you meet people that every relationship is going to be different. But with romantic love, instead of being open to how different everything is, we have this one mold, and we're all trying to fit it into that mold. Isn't that right? And we have the picture, and the picture is that you live together, or the picture is that you're committed for a certain amount of time. The picture having to do with all this mythology in your mind about what intimacy looks like. But intimacy is friendship. Intimacy is where two people see each other as supporting each other. And sometimes when you're supporting someone, you're supporting them in going through whatever it is that they need to go through. Some of the time, one of the things that we all, you hear people say, once again, it's a cliche, but it's true, that sometimes exerting, that real power sometimes lies in not exerting your power. And that's very true. And in intimate relationships, that seems to me very clear. You know how mothers sometimes just know how to hook into you like nobody else does? And I had been through a lot with my mother in resenting things that she would say where she went right for some button, and I thought, how ungracious of her, how unkind. And what I found in relationships is that I'm a pretty perceptive person, and I have gifts, I think, in that area, actually. And I used to use them against people. I used to use them against people in intimacy because I had a way of knowing, and I don't mean like psychic, but just I could perceive things and know things, and I thought I'd know how to get you. And I know how to hook into you. And I know how to manipulate you, basically. And I didn't understand why it didn't work. I didn't understand why people didn't appreciate it. I didn't understand why people didn't appreciate the fact that I could always tell them exactly what was wrong with them and exactly what they needed to do. That's not always the loving thing to do, that's why. The loving thing to do sometimes is to not say what you know. The loving thing to do sometimes is to just be very, very clear that another person has their own life to live. Real intimacy is not where somebody becomes less, and then the place where they're less meets the place where somebody else is less, and then this weak spot gets glued onto this weak spot. Real relationship, the Course says, is where two complete, total individuals are able to come into space together. And to be a complete, whole individual, you can only grow into your wholeness. You can only grow into your completeness when somebody is allowing you permission to be whole and allowing you permission to be complete. But it's very difficult to feel that someone is allowing you permission to be whole, is allowing you permission to be complete, when what you're also getting, and this is what happens in the spiritual community all the time, you're getting double messages from people. I want this to be a holy relationship. I want you to be whole. I want you to be whole. On the other hand, I want you to love me the way this is the way I need it to be. Right? And it's very difficult. But the Course says, do not kid yourself. There is no love without freedom. There is no love without letting people be exactly what they need to be. And that is what you do with your friends, isn't it? So why is it that we have such a difficult time doing it with our lovers? The reason we have a difficult time doing with our lovers is because we have this fear that if we don't make it happen, that we might not get it. And the Course is saying it's the fact that you are trying to make it happen. That's the reason why you're not getting it. The Course says the dictates of the ego in love, relationships, is seek but do not find. So you're always seeking, you're always trying to make it happen, but it's never happening. Anytime I ever went on a diet, I gained weight. Anytime I've set out to make money at something, I haven't. And anytime I've tried to make a relationship be what I wanted it to be, I have failed. And yet the issue in the Course in Miracles is you'll be the perfect weight if you'll just stop trying to make it happen. And God will send you all abundance that you need that will be perfect for you if you will just serve. And every relationship that would serve your greater learning, your greater joining, and your greater growth will just be there. If you will just receive from the universe what the universe has to give you without saying, no, I want it to look this way, or I want it to look that way. And then one of the things that starts occurring to you ultimately is, maybe, as we say all the time, the whole myth is a joke. Maybe this whole idea that one person is kind of a joke. Well, the idea of closer intimacy with people is not a joke, but the Course in Miracles says that He will make that happen. But in natural intimacy, it's not a different category of existence from other friendships. It's just a deeper association, but it's not a different quality of association. And you wouldn't say to your friends, you have to be with me in a year. Why should you say to a lover, you have to be with me in a year? The Course in Miracles says that that's not what commitment is in the Course. Commitment, the Course in Miracles says, we are to be 100% committed in every relationship that we have. So commitment for us, so many times people say, well, this person doesn't have faith, or this person, we really misuse this whole concept of abusive intimacy, a fear of commitment. A lot of times I hear people saying, well, that person is afraid of intimacy, when it seems to me that the person talking is the one who's afraid of intimacy, because sometimes intimacy means I open my heart to you, I love you, I make you vulnerable, and whatever you do, commit or not commit, whatever those things mean to you, is really okay with me, because I'm going to be intimate. And you can afford to be totally vulnerable like that once you get that not what the other person isn't the source of your good one way or the other. And if you're like, you think that, if that person doesn't want to commit. I love the way in that book, I Come as a Brother, that Barbara has out on the book table. At one part he says, I'm so sick of you guys saying you're not going to go into a relationship because you're afraid it'll break your heart. He says, nonsense. You've had your heart broken before and you lived through it. That was really a revelation to me. It's true. A lot of times you go into things, you think, oh, my heart might get broken. Yeah, so your heart might get broken. So what's in a certain situation in terms of just making yourself vulnerable to love, when you think about what the alternative is of not even opening up, we've gotten into a very security-conscious generation. We're trying to, it's like we have this mentality around money. We have this idea that we're going to put aside money, so that we'll be safe 5 years from now. And now we're trying to do the same thing with relationships. I want to make it so that I know it'll be okay and it'll be here for me a few years from now. Well, that's not free life. That's not real living, actually. Of course, this free living is when you are totally committed to the moment that you have and to a friendship factor with the person that you are with. And then commitment means sometimes committing, if I'm committed to your friendship, let's say somebody comes up and says, I really need to take a trip for 6 months. I really need to go off by myself for 6 months. It's something that I need to do. I need to be alone, or I need to see Africa, or whatever it is. Well, a lot of people would say to that, I knew that you were afraid of commitment. I knew that you didn't know how to commit in a relationship. Well, I think the Course would point out is, well, who's not being committed to a real relationship here? Because to me, it would seem to me that if you're really committed to a relationship, you try to hear a person when they were saying that. Because not everybody who wants to take off for 6 months is taking off because they're afraid of intimacy. Sometimes people are taking off for 6 months because of just what they said. It's something that they need to do that would actually make them deeper in relationship and better in relationship when they get back. I used to have this fear that if somebody wasn't with me, that meant that I wasn't getting something. But it takes real growth to see, and the Course in Miracles would certainly indicate it. Sometimes when people aren't with you physically is when they go through the changes, which will then mean that they have the more to give you when they are with you. Because physical proximity is not relationship. The mind is relationship. A woman was telling me today about how she wanted a man to go somewhere with her, and when she asked me my opinion of it, I told her I thought she was being pretty manipulative trying to get him to go. And she said, all right, well, I think you're right. And so if he doesn't show up there, I'm not going to call. He'll get what he wants. He wants space, all right, I won't call. I said, sorry, a little bit more is demanded of you than that. We say here all the time, behavioral modification is not enough. I said, if you hold on to your attitude, just because you don't call him, you will still be sending little toxins through the airwaves. It's going to be more than that. You have to actually release him. You don't think that not calling means you've released someone. To release someone means to release someone. She says, well, I'll work on that. But you know what? It's not work. It's a decision. You know, it's like that joke about you don't try to do something. You do it or you don't. And all that you really need is the willingness. The willingness to say, I release this person. I don't want to run my trips on this person. And I'm not going to worry right now about, you know, and then sometimes people are always saying to me in those situations, but they, why aren't you saying what they're doing? And I say, first of all, they didn't come to me to ask my opinion. You did. And you're never going to find a Course in Miracles person supporting you in about their guilt. Course in Miracles companionship's never going to support you. You're right. They're so bad. There is no such thing as a victim. Miracles come from you, not from another person. Miracles occur because you have a shift in perception. And that's what a companion spiritually is going to do for you, support you in how you might shift your way of looking at things. Because no one can deprive you of anything. The only thing that can deprive you is your perception that there is deprivation. So if you think that someone is depriving you, you're the one being the one hitting the button that says deprivation. And sometimes I was talking to someone today, and we were talking about how when someone isn't giving you as much love as they might, that's not the time to then withhold your love and to say, well, I'm really mad because you're not loving me as much as I want. That's the time when you have to love enough for both of you. Sometimes that's when a person, you know, I get so clear that I used to, at the first sign of somebody not loving me the way I wanted to, then I went like this, and the universe was saying, grow up. Grow up. If they're not, who's being faithless? You're saying they're being faithless in the relationship by not giving you the love you need, but you're being awfully faithless in a relationship if somebody else not giving you what you want can tempt you so quickly to turning it off yourself. Who's faithless? You're faithless. You're the only person that can be. So the issue is not in Course in Miracles to figure out what somebody else isn't giving you. The issue in the Course in Miracles is to ask yourself, are you giving them the space they need? Are you giving them the release that they need? And we are not from a poverty consciousness here. We don't think that we give away our money and then we don't have any. We give, and then we don't have any time to ourselves. We give and give in relationships and then we're walked all over, but that's saintly. That's not the Course in Miracles. It's just release a person, be where they are. And then if they're supposed to be the one for you, the relationship can fall into that. And if they're not supposed to be the romantic one for you, that's good also, because then that will just fall, you'll still be friends, and you'll move on. It's a much gentler scenario. And the reason it's a gentler scenario is because it's based on truth. And because it's based on truth, it works. That's just all. That's really all of it in a nutshell. To release a brother. Are you releasing them? Are you allowing them to be where they need to be? Too many people think forgiveness, and this is where a lot of people's minds say, I know it's about forgiveness, I know it's about forgiveness. But remember, forgiveness in the Course in Miracles is not the old-fashioned forgiveness. It's not saying, I know they're a jerk, but it's okay, I forgive them. No. Forgiveness in the Course in Miracles is, oh God, help me see they're not a jerk. Dear God, the Course says the prayer for forgiveness is the prayer for the realization of how much you already have. Prayer for forgiveness is not, you know, I forgive this person even though they are terribly afraid of commitment. You know, it's not like that. It's, oh, dear God, allow me to see that they're not doing anything to me. Allow me to see they're just living their life. And allow me to see that it's not my job on this earth to make them live it any differently. Allow me to see that it's my job on this earth to just let them be and to shower them with love. Let me see that that's the way to form real relationship. Let me see that that's the way to form real friendship. And let me finally understand that without that, there is no love. Thank you very much. Amen. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that, Sunshine. Marianne Williamson.